Okay. Can I request the rest of you turn your phones off as well? Put them on silent so there's no disturbances. I'm just going to go around the room for your benefit, just to introduce individuals, so we won't dwell too long on it. So we've got Faz and Mohammed, who've been instrumental in the local campaign, together with Ibi and Mebs. These guys are, community leaders. They've got huge influences in the community as well, and they were instrumental in our local campaign. Shaks is in the corner. Shakil Chowdhury, he was the agent for all the independent candidates. And then we've got Councillor Amin Kapadia. He's one of the newly elected councillors. Councillor Rana Gulistan Khan, another newly elected councillor. We've got Rif Haworth, who was part of our media team. We've got Imran, who's also one of our newly elected councillors, Sid, and myself. I've been a councillor for a good number of years, and we've got Muntazir there, who's also a newly elected councillor, and he's part of the team there. Craig, I'm not going to ask you to introduce yourself because you'll do that in the course of your introduction. I'm going to ask you to do. So the format of this is, first of all, we give you about 20 minutes to, give us some background on yourself, why Blackburn, and what you're going to bring to Blackburn, what your aspirations are, etc. And then we'll reserve the latter part of the session, which is the 20 minutes for Q&As. We will break in between the Q&As and your presentation, purely because we've got to go and offer the prayers. Is that okay? Right, thank you. So, anybody got any? Right, so your phones are all off? Okay. All yours.
No, I should say, if we come to prayers, just stop me.
Sure.
Right. Well, thank you very much for coming to listen to me. I'm not going to make you a big speech about Palestine, partly because I think you've probably all heard me make a speech about Palestine by now. And it's very easy to find me doing that online. But I think it is worth acknowledging that if it were not for the genocide in Gaza, I wouldn't be here today. That's what's caused this, in effect. That's what's caused this eruption in British politics, which is the popular revulsion at the genocide in Gaza. And I think it's also fair to say, probably, that if it wasn't for the genocide in Gaza, many of you wouldn't have been elected as independent councillors, have been elected as independent councillors. You may have stayed in the Labour Party, you may have done other things, but again, the sort of transformation in Blackburn politics, the catalyst for that has been this dreadful genocide in Gaza. And we now face a general election where people have the usual choice in British politics of a two-party system where both the main parties effectively support the genocide. Do support the genocide. And I think there's no disguising what the Labour Party has become in that respect. And the fact that it's taken the support of particularly the Muslim population, but also of left-wing voters and others with human rights concerns. It's always taken that for granted on the grounds they've got nowhere else to go. And Keir Starmer, after he took over from Jeremy, took the view really that he can move the party as far to the right as he wants because there's no alternative for people on the left. The left-wing people still have to vote for him, and they can pick up a lot of right-wing voters by going further right. And I think we saw that today, in a way, and that with the first shots of the election campaign today, if you like, at Prime Minister's questions, where Starmer was attacking Sunak over the Rwanda flights, but he was attacking him saying, well, they won't have started before the election, you can't get it done. He wasn't attacking him saying it's immoral or unethical to send immigrants to Rwanda, to send asylum seekers to Rwanda, which is a dreadful... I mean, what kind of country does that to people who are seeking asylum? He wasn't attacking on the grounds it's unethical and wrong. He was attacking on the grounds they're not being efficient enough doing about it. And one of the 6 pledges Labour is making is border control. We'll be better at border control. Basically, we will be more efficient racists than the Tories, is what it boils down to. So it's not only Gaza. It's not only Gaza where Labour has abandoned people and adopted, if you like, Tory policies. And I don't think it's a matter of doing it for the election. I think Starmer believes this stuff. I think he's a very right-wing person. And we've really got to lead a revolt against the Labour Party and show the Labour Party they can't do that. They cannot take the votes of people for granted, and we have to give people an alternative. And to give people an alternative, it has to be an alternative that can win. And I'm going to give you some thoughts about why I'd like to be the candidate that you support. And you'll perhaps forgive me if I start off by saying a few things that I would consider if I were you, if you see what I mean, in trying to work out who's the best candidate here. And I should say that I think that if you're doing pluses and minuses, being a local man is a plus, and not being a local man is a minus. And I have no pretence to be a local man in Blackburn. I lived here for 3 months of my life, which is 1/260th of my life. It's not an awful lot. So although I know Blackburn a bit, I'm not local. So that is a disadvantage. And I admit that's a disadvantage. But among the things you might want to consider in deciding who might be the best candidate is, firstly, who can win? And that's the most important question, as far as I'm concerned. And then you have to ask yourselves, are you actually wanting to win this? Or are you just giving the Labour Party a shock and trying to show them not to take you for granted? Or are you trying to defeat them? And if you're trying to defeat them, I really think I am the candidate that can help you do that. And part of that's due to my experience and my CV that I'll come on to in a moment. And part of it's also because we have to appeal across communities. Because the ability to win lots of council wards is not the ability to win the constituency. And we have to appeal to voters from all the communities. I should say I like Adnan. I met Adnan and was talking this all over after the demonstration on Saturday. And what he said to me is, well, that's old politics, thinking of different communities. Nowadays, you know, we should think in terms of everyone being equal. And of course, that's entirely true. But you can't ignore the fact there are different communities with different cultures, and we've got to get votes. If you look at the council elections, I think it's fair to say, and I'm open to correction, but looking through them, I think you achieved votes of 60 to 70% by and large in the Muslim wards, in the Muslim majority wards. Well, if you get 60 to 70% of the Muslim vote, if your candidate gets 60 to 70% of the Muslim vote, that means you've got to get 20% of the non-Muslim vote in order to get over the line, if you do the math. So you've got to say where do we have a candidate who can do that? One advantage I do bring is because I am perhaps in a limited circle, not in terms of general population, because the mainstream media hate me, so you don't see me in the mainstream media very often unless they're going to, the Murdoch press is going to pin something horrible about me. But within left-wing circles, if you like, and intellectual circles, I'm quite a well-known person. So if I'm the candidate, I'm going to bring
Sorry.
That's okay. There are a great many activists who are going to come into canvass for me and to campaign for me from all over the UK and in fact internationally. Even when I stood here against Jack Straw in 2005, we had people from 20 different countries come and canvass for me, and I wasn't really nearly as well known then as I am now. But but from all over the UK, we will have experienced left-wing political activists. People have been in the Stop the War movement in particular, those kinds of people coming in to help broaden the campaign and give us a new base of canvassers we can send out and try and win. I also have a CV which in some ways appeals to Tory voters. I'm a left-wing person, but among what I might call liberal or intellectual Tories, I have friends. David Davis MP, the Tory MP, is a good personal friend of mine. Peter Oborne, the former chief correspondent of the Daily Telegraph, is a very close friend of mine. We were just in Pakistan together 2 weeks ago. So I have the ability to stretch across and attract votes from a certain sectors, yeah? Both from, if you like, the socialist tradition, the left-wing socialist tradition you have in Blackburn among voters, and from the more liberal Tories who respect the fact that I'm an ex-ambassador, an ex-university rector, and have all that stuff on my CV that Tories like to see as indicating a respectable person. So I have that ability to pull in the kind of votes we need to pull in from places. And to bring in the people to do the canvassing, the legwork that we need to do in those places to get those votes in. And I think that's an important consideration, an important advantage that I bring. Also, because I've got the support of George and the Workers' Party, they have quite a lot of material. They have an awful lot of the modern data analysis of the electorate. And they have plans whereby, for example, and I didn't know this, I've stood for election before and I didn't know this, when you do your electoral communication, it doesn't have to be the same one to everyone. I always thought it did. But actually you can send different electoral communications to different voters, targeted in different ways. And, for example, I'm talking of the one which the post office delivers, and, for example, you can do it per household or per elector. That's a choice you have. But if you do it per elector, they don't all have to be the same, even in the same household. So you can send, if there are 4 people in the household, you can send 4 different leaflets to 4 different people in the household, thus delivering 4, and they don't have to all go at the same time. I didn't know that you had this flexibility. This is something that I learned from George's party people. And the access to that kind of campaigning expertise, and the people who can do that, who know how to do it with the printer, with the post office to get that done, is again an advantage. So I've got these campaigning advantages. You then have the question of who it is you're sending to Parliament and how will they be in Parliament and what can they contribute as an MP once they are there. And this is this is the difficult and embarrassing bit, because I had to tell you what a great person I am, which is
Which is what we're here for.
which is what I'm here for. But I mean, I was Britain's youngest ambassador. When I was appointed ambassador, I was Britain's youngest ambassador. I have a first-class degree. I've written 5 books. I'm Julian Assange's best friend. I'm a close friend of Jeremy Corbyn, of George Galloway, of numerous people, of Noam Chomsky. And there's a reason these people know me. I don't come from money. I've achieved what I've achieved and got where I am because of my qualities and abilities. And I'm someone, I've campaigned for years on Palestine. I have the phone number of the Palestinian foreign minister in my phone. I'm the deputy foreign minister, and that's on the Fatah side, the Palestinian administration side, not on the Hamas side. If I had the phone number of the Hamas people on my phone, I would get arrested. But I do have the Palestinian, and I advised the Palestinian Authority on acceding to the International Criminal Court of the Statute of Rome 10 years ago. I was one of the people formally giving them advice to do that, and it was difficult to persuade them. Actually, they had a number of objections. They've done that, and that's what has led to the arrest warrant against Netanyahu. I wrote back in early November and late October, I think, I wrote and published 2 articles on using the Holocaust Convention against Israel in the International Criminal Court. In the International Court of Justice. And why that's an effective route, because the International Criminal Court wouldn't do anything, I said, unless the International Court of Justice acts first. And I explained how you do it. And this comes from my experience. I was a diplomat for 22 years. I was a member of the senior management structure of the Foreign Office for 6 years, so I know international law. And this comes from my experience there. I explained that any country which is a party to the Holocaust Convention can take to the Genocide Convention. Sorry, to the Genocide Convention, can take Israel to the International Court of Justice, and I explained how you do it. And the articles I wrote were given by Andrew Feinstein, who you may know is standing against Keir Starmer, and who was here speaking in Blackburn a couple of weeks ago. Andrew Feinstein gave my articles because he's a former South African MP and a former ANC minister under Nelson Mandela. Andrew gave my articles to the South African Foreign Minister, and my articles were on the table at the cabinet meeting when South Africa decided to take Israel to the International Criminal Court. And there in The Hague, I was in the courtroom for South Africa against Israel. So, if you like, I suppose what I'm saying to you is I'm a candidate who, given the position in Parliament, can do good in the world acting on the international stage. I've spoken at the United Nations in Geneva on Palestine in December, for example. So you're assisting not only the Palestinians, because there are many other subjects I want to speak on, but you're assisting somebody into a platform which they have shown they can use and will make good use of and know what to do with. On top of which, you'll then have somebody of weight who's in Parliament able to argue for Blackburn. And I'm going to be heavily dependent, certainly initially, on you to tell me what needs saying for Blackburn and what Blackburn's problems are and what the policies I should be adopting are. And that's the final quality I wanted to talk of. I said you've got to think about someone's ability to be elected. You've got to think about what they're going to do as an MP, how much use they'll be as an MP, how they will speak as an MP in the House of Commons, and what international use they can make of the position of an MP. And the last thing I think you've got to think of is how you as councillors will work with that person once they are an MP. How will that go? And I think the way I would put that is, are you confident that the person you would be making the MP is someone you could work with, someone who would relate to you, who you would get on with, who would be genuinely interested in your problem? If you come to me and someone, as a councillor, someone who's a constituent of yours has a problem with housing, has a problem with immigration, whatever, am I actually really going to be interested? Or whoever you say, are they really genuinely going to be interested in helping that person because I want to help you and I want to help that person? As opposed to being in the job for your own profile or your own ambition. And I think that's a very important question. And I'd like to say, and again, I have to talk about myself, but when I was a British ambassador, I think most of you know, I blew the whistle on the CIA's torture and extraordinary rendition program, which was a huge thing at the time. And I lost my job and my career because of it. I didn't have to do that, but where I was in Uzbekistan, the CIA were flying people in to be tortured to death, literally, Muslims from all around the world, and in order to get false confessions that people were members of Al-Qaeda. And I found that unconscionable. I couldn't live with myself being part of that. And as British ambassador in Uzbekistan, I was getting the intelligence reports from MI6 and the CIA that came out of the torture chambers of people being tortured to death or subject to. There's one guy, and I sent the photos that I got from the chap's mother. I sent to the pathology department of Glasgow University, and the report came back to say he'd been boiled alive. He'd been immersed in boiling liquid, and he was still alive when he was put in the liquid. That was a pathologist's report. And I reported all this back to London. I reported all this back to Jack Straw, who was Foreign Secretary, and said, we've got to stop this. We've got to stop this happening. We've got to stop getting intelligence from torture. And I was called back to a meeting in London, and I was told it was not illegal to get intelligence from torture if it wasn't us that were doing the torture. That's why I left the Foreign Office. And that's why I then turned up in Blackburn. That's why I came to Blackburn, because Jack Straw was standing here, and I wanted to tell people this in the 2005 election. And I came here entirely at my own expense, spent 3 months of my life here telling people about it. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, it was a difficult experience because the community leaders, and particularly Lord Patel and others, absolutely closed Blackburn off against me. And the council closed Blackburn off against me. And things which by law as a candidate you are entitled to, like the use of community centres and school halls for meetings and things, I was not allowed. And even the postal service was not delivering my electoral communications. I was not allowed into a single hustings meeting, even though I was a candidate. In those days, Blackburn was very, very shut off against me, and that's no longer the point. No longer the case. But the point I want to make to you is I was willing to give up my career, a very good career as a British ambassador, which pays very well, bluntly, to try to stop the torture of Muslims. And I went on to work for years. I worked against the Prevent programme, against the Quilliam Foundations. I worked with the Islamic Human Rights Committee. I worked with Cage and Muazzam Beg. I worked with all these people. I personally, for example, gave evidence or presented the case at over 40 immigration appeal tribunals. And I won every case. I never lost a case at an immigration appeal tribunal, and I never charged anybody 1 single penny for helping them at an immigration appeal tribunal. And that's the sort of person I would be as your MP when it comes to helping you and helping constituents. Because, I mean, I honestly can say, I gave up my career on principle. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do it because I don't need a job. I don't need money. I'm not trying to make a name for myself. I already have that. I'm doing this because I think we have a moment here where we can really change politics, where we can force the Labour Party to maybe go back eventually to representing the people, where we can reject the Israeli domination of our politics by simply buying up the political class. They simply pay them. And that's what it boils down to. Not one person has resigned from Labour Friends of Israel. David Lammy, the Labour Foreign Affairs spokesman, took £70,000 donation from Israeli lobbyists after the genocide had started. We've got to reject that, and that's what I want to do. And I think I can win here. I really do. And if I thought Adnan had a better chance than me of winning here, I swear to you, I wouldn't be here now trying to convince you. I really wouldn't, because I'm not in this for myself. But I think we can do it, and I'm doing it, I think, for the right reasons, which is to try to help, to try to make a difference, which is what I spend my life doing. I think I've maybe spoken enough, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Craig. Hold the thoughts. Let's just go and pray first, and then we'll come back and. Okay, guys. Zach, thank you very much. Thanks for that, Craig.
No problem.
So before we open it up for Q&As, can I just get some clarification first and foremost about your current political position? Where are you at exactly at the moment in terms of affiliation to any political parties, etc.? Because I think there's some concerns around, not only amongst our group here, but also wider, that you may be affiliated to George's party or other parties. So can you just provide some clarification on that?
Yeah. I think affiliated to is a reasonable word. I am affiliated to George's party. George is very anxious for me to stand with his party badge, and the reason he's anxious for that is that if they get 150,000 votes in total nationwide and get 2 MPs elected, then they become an official political party as far as the UK system is concerned, and they become eligible for government funding for what's called the short system. And I think that I think it's fairly sure they believe that having me here would be their best chance of getting that second MP, the best chance I've got in the country of getting that second MP. Now, there's no point in us talking together unless we're completely open and honest with each other. I've never been a member of George's party. It's not. I've known George since I was 18 years old. When I was 18 years old, we were walking the streets of Dundee together, collecting for the miners' strike and for there was a company called Timex that was on strike in Dundee at the time. And also we were involved back in 1978. We were involved in the twinning of Nablus in Palestine with the city of Dundee. So I've known George that long. Now, I don't share a lot of George's politics. A lot of things we don't agree on particularly, which is why I've never been a member of his party. But he asked me to come. He asked me if I would stand in Blackburn, more or less as a personal favour, if you like. And I said, well, I was thinking of because I stood here against Jack Straw before, and because I wanted to take on Labour over the situation in Gaza, this was the obvious place for me to do it. So the two came together, if you see what I mean. But I also said that I wouldn't stand unless I had the people in Blackburn wanting me to stand. I wouldn't come in from outside and impose unless I had the local people who were active in the cause wanting me to stand and wanting me to be their candidate. So that's where we are. I'd like to stand with his party logo because it's important to their party in many ways. But I'm not a party man, if you like. As you probably gathered, I'm very much my own man with my own ideas. So it's not that I'm signed up to any particular programme or anything along those lines. I have heard that there are people who have objections to George and his party. I'm not actually quite sure what those objections are, to be perfectly honest. He seems to me a lot less objectionable than the Labour Party or the Tory Party, but not everyone can agree on everything, and that's normal. But that's where we are, and that's where I am.
That's fine. So just on the back of that, what you just said there, can you just sort of allude, will that not stagnate your ambition, joining George with, and you've said that you don't align with some of his policies, etc. Will that not stagnate you somewhat in your overall ambition of what you're trying to achieve here? And also, what about the issues around, I think you've alluded to it there, that George has got some baggage historically. He's stood with Assad and various other things that people take exception to. That doesn't portray a positive image of him within the indigenous community in particular. And I think if you're going to fight this election purely on Gaza, then I think you may be on a bit of a struggle there, I think, personally. But
I don't intend to fight it purely on Gaza. As I was alluding to, there are many other issues, including immigration, including housing, including ownership of water and electricity and public utilities, where everyone's seen their bills go through the roof. There are many other issues, and on most of those I do align with George, to be perfectly honest. There are things in his history which where I don't particularly agree with him on all points of foreign policy, including the one you mentioned. But then he's not the candidate I am, and I would say, it didn't stop him being elected in Rochdale, which is not that far away. They were electorally very successful, and my experience I've been coming to Blackburn this last 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks, however long it is now, talking to people, and my experience so far has been very positive of people's view of George. I agree he's a bit Marmite, and there are people who like him and people who don't like him, but I've not met a lot of people in Blackburn who don't like George Galloway. I've not met a lot of people who don't like him. But I'm not asking anyone to vote for George Galloway, I'm asking him to vote for me.
I'm going to bring Illy.
Yeah, Craig, one of the things which rattles my cage,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it does with others as well, is that we feel that George has imposed you on us, in effect, because there was very little consultation, if any, with any of us when he announced that Craig Murray is going to stand for in Blackburn as our candidate. In fact, there was no consultation with me or most of the other people in this particular room. And that's what bugs me in effect, right? Because if he can do that now, what might he not do in the future, in that he will just completely treat us with contempt, people who would actually work for you on the streets, knock on the doors and etc., right? What is there that to stop him from doing what he has just done now, in effect, impose his candidate onto us, say he's our candidate, and what are you going to do about it, in effect, right? And that's what I sort of object to. There was no consultation with us.
Yeah. Well, I should say I apologise. I mean, I sincerely
And it's not
apologise.
even about yourself.
Yeah.
It's George's policy.
Yeah, I sincerely apologise for that, and I think it was partly a misunderstanding. I mean, I really do think it was partly a misunderstanding. And we had a meeting in Rochdale about 5 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's about 5 weeks.
Yeah, and who was there apart from you? There was.
Ibrahim was there. This was Ibrahim still at Man.
Yeah. And at that meeting, my understanding was, and this appears to have been a misunderstanding, and I honestly don't believe anybody was lying or cheating or deliberately misleading anyone. It was a misunderstanding. My genuine understanding of that was because I'd said to George, I'll only stand if the people of Blackburn want me to stand. You know, if I'm invited to stand by the people of Blackburn. That's always been my point of view, and in a sense that's why we're here now. George said we'll have a meeting in Blackburn and I'll get the Blackburn people to come over. My expectation had been that would be a bigger meeting. I was actually expecting to see you, or at least many of you, then in Rochdale, if you see what I mean. But it turned out to be a much smaller and quite a brief meeting. But my understanding from it was that was it being confirmed that the independent people in Blackburn wanted me to stand. And in fact, it seems that was a misunderstanding on my part, and there hadn't been a proper process of consultation. But I don't think that was deliberate, and I don't think. And George has been trying to get things together in a huge hurry, you know, which has been, and so it appears there had been toes trodden on, and I apologise for that. I swear to you, it wasn't my intention. I don't think it was George's intention. He can be a bit rough. There's no point denying it, but I don't think it was his intention particularly. But I'm here now, asking you to get over that and say certainly. I mean, if I'm your MP, George can't tell me what to do, and I'd say that quite happily to his face, and he would agree with that. And I'm one of his oldest friends, and he's not. It's not the situation that he'd be able to turn around and say, and he could turn around and say, next election, actually, I don't want Craig Murray anymore, I want this person now, and hopefully we'd all turn around and tell him to go away. I'm not asking you. I'm asking you to select me or to back me because I'm me. I'm asking you to back me. I'm not asking you to back me because George Galloway told you to back me, because that would be wrong. And if you feel there's been any forcing, I apologise for that. And partly it's a factor of how quickly things have happened. But partly I think there really is an element of misunderstanding there.
I appreciate that, but then what is there in the future to stop him doing that again? Because we could have our toes trodden a second time around. What is there to stop him? My point is, if there is a policy, this is going to be a minute. Well, George's policy, or follow his group's policy.
I follow this group's policy. I mean, one thing I've said to you is on anything, you know, connected to Blackburn and the well-being of Blackburn and policies for people in Blackburn, I will follow this group, and that I promise you, I will do. And when you say what is there to stop him, the Workers' Party or me or George can't win Blackburn without you. It's just impossible. So you can stop them at any time by just saying no, we won't go along with it.
We want to stop Labour.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
want to stop the independent
Yeah.
candidate, right? But
Yeah.
what influence would we have in the future if you abide by George's policies, and George didn't consult with us?
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, I'm my own person. I'm not George, and I'm not beholden to George. And at a world level, I mean, not in the UK and in the UK media, but I'm not junior to George, if you see what I mean. I'm not, if you go to the United Nations in New York or Geneva, many more people know Craig Murray than know George Galloway. That's not how our relationship is. It just isn't. And I don't think it's not that George's writ is going to run in Galloway, and I'm not someone anyway. I'm just not who would ever try to impose on you. That's not the kind of human being I am. I'm not
So if you had
arrogant
to
or
toss
unpleasant.
up between the two, you would side with us rather than with George.
Yeah. If it's a matter related to Blackburn and the interests of Blackburn, I will always side with the Blackburn councillors, because how on earth would I know better than you? And how would George know better than you? Anything to do with the interests of Blackburn. And if it were a matter of foreign policy over Kashmir, for example, and I'll just give that as an entirely random example, I may feel there that I have some knowledge that you don't have, and I wouldn't necessarily follow you, because that's not particularly connected to Blackburn. I'm not saying on every subject in the entire world I'll do what you tell me, but on anything connected to the interests of Blackburn, I would never go against the
Yeah, we
the
talk about
local council.
consultation as opposed to following orders. We talk about
Yeah.
consultation.
Yeah, I just hope I come over as I am. I'm not someone who's going to boss you around or insist on having my way. It's just not how I am. It's not why I want to do it.
Sid?
Okay. The last conversation we had, I think the question I asked was, would you stand for the independent party rather than George's party? And that's you said to come back to think about it. The reason one of the concerns we have is, okay, George has just won in Rochdale. It's got the election coming over, the Labour will try, or the Tories will try to oust him out. If he were to lose, there is no Workers' Party, because it is about George. The whole party stands behind George. So again, if you're thinking of going with George's party, that is our greatest concern. That we're really nowhere, we're in no man's land there. Hence the question was asked to you, that would you not rather stand for us as an independent candidate?
Can I just add on to that if you look at the recent local elections in Rochdale, I think the Workers' Party fielded 13 candidates, and of whom 2 were successful. So is the momentum still with George? Is it enough for him to, regain his seat in Rochdale? This is something that we've been pondering over, and I think there may be some evidence there to suggest that he's lost that momentum. It's not with him anymore. Whereas we're in a completely different scenario here in Blackburn.
Yeah, and it's a difficult question. This is a difficult question, and on the other side of it, you've got the, frankly, you've got your independent group who did fantastically electorally and were extremely successful, but to date, that electoral success doesn't go past the bits of Blackburn inhabited by the Muslim community predominantly, and that's just true. Whether the independence banner will work better than the Workers' Party banner in the other bits that you've got to get some support from is a question that I do not know the answer to, and I just don't, and I don't think anyone can, because it's never really been tried much. And that's something we have to ponder and consider. I also have my difficulty of, I told you I've known George for years and years and years, and he's kind of personally depending on me, and it would be, I think he would view it as something of a personal betrayal if I turned around and said to him, George, I think I have a better chance of being elected as an independent. that would be difficult for me on a personal basis, and but I'm not saying it's impossible. But my feeling is against it. I don't think. I mean, if you back me,
Sorry.
if you back me, if the people in this room back me, I think your voters will back me if you're with me. I don't.
I missed it.
If you back me, I think your voters will back me. I don't think the fact that I've got a Workers' Party logo, if you're supporting me because we're in an alliance, I don't think your voters will balk and say, well, we're not doing that because he's got a Workers' Party logo on his ballot paper. I don't think that would happen. I think I would retain your votes, as in the votes of the people who elected you. I think will come with you where you go.
George, sorry, Craig.
Yeah.
What we are concerned about is what will happen once you get elected. Would we have any influence over yourself, or would it all be contained by George?
No, I mean it won't. I just promise you it won't. It's not going to work like that. And if that became a big issue, then I would just resign the Workers' Party and become an independent MP. I'm not doing. I'm not a puppet for George. I'm not a puppet for anyone. I'm me, very much so. And my loyalty will be to you, and my passion, my desire is human rights and international law and making life better for,
we don't have an issue in your credentials
for people.
Okay.
Yeah. But that passion should tell you. I'm not going to sort of subordinate that to whatever George wants to do at the time. That's just not going to happen. It just isn't. I absolutely promise you that. I mean, on that ground, I honestly think you can allay your fear, because that just would not happen.
Okay, thanks for that. Can I just provide a factual correction? Out of the 7 that were successful at the local election, 2 wards, Wensley Fold and Rowley, they're not predominantly Muslim.
Okay.
And we fielded 2 candidates in predominantly indigenous wards without any level of campaign whatsoever, and I think we made sufficient inroads within them for them to provide us with indicators that if we do push hard enough, even with an Asian candidate, there is opportunity within them wards to pick them seats up as well. So I think factually that statement you provided, that we've only made inroads in predominantly Muslim areas, I think that doesn't sort of really. If you look at if you look at the figures, you'll see that Riff was one of our candidates in Chadworth Ward, which is predominantly indigenous. We didn't knock on any doors. We didn't, send a leaflet till the last week of the campaign, and she picked up 300 votes. And for us to win that ward, 700 wins it. So we made sufficient, I think that was an indicator for us. Ewood, which is predominantly indigenous, same again. I think we made. We have the evidence now that if we do push a little bit, I think those are winnable as well. So I just wanted to correct that. Yeah. That's not.
Well, we've got 2 questions there, I think. I mean, while they're predominantly indigenous, how many of the 300 people who voted were indigenous, and but also. There's no doubt about it that the Gaza issue in particular may not be felt quite as strongly in the indigenous community as it is in the Muslim community, not quite as widely. But it is felt, and it's particularly felt among young people. So there is a resonance there on that campaigning issue. And then there are all the socialists who've been abandoned by the Labour Party, of which there are a lot in Blackburn. So they can be picked up as well. And I accept your point that it's possible that a good deal of that could also be picked up by an Asian candidate. I accept you don't have to be a white candidate to pick up some of that. That I'm sure is true. Yeah, but I broadly accept what you're saying.
Did you have a question?
Sorry,
Did you have a question?
No, good answer.
Answer, John?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions and just a bit of a clarification on that, Craig.
as far as the Workers' Party is concerned, and you're saying that you're part of them, inherently when you're a part of a party, you have to a certain degree follow their norms, rules, regulations, whatever you want to call them. And you can't turn around and say, well, afterwards, well, no, I'm going to follow that one. That's all right, bye-bye to you. For that matter, as you know, before when you spoke up, is that right? Bye-bye, Craig. That's one of the concerns that comes to my mind. The other concern with the baggage of George, he was in Bradford and he didn't really get, and then was he in Bethnal Green or somewhere? And now in Rochdale, which by looking at reading in between the lines, it might be a difficult one to rehold with him. Now people are questioning that why did he not get re-elected in Bradford or Bethnal Green? Now he's gone into Rochdale. That's one of the questions running on our minds and a lot of our voters. And obviously we carry a lot of clout as independent at present with over 10,000-12,000 votes. And people they have an expectation of us of this. Now, when you say you're a part of them, I believe you have your own party registered also. Is that true? One of your own political party that you're head of? Or is that just a rumour?
No, it's just a rumour.
That's okay, just go that
That's not true.
So that's one of
That's
the
a good idea.
questions, or many questions, running in the voters' mind that, okay, George Galloway speaks about Palestine, but Palestine isn't the only issue here. We need somebody to look at the local issues also. So therefore, that is a bit of a concern to us. That how do you feel, like Sid said, independent, but you said that we'll have to go with George. Now my pertinent question is that if we decide to back somebody else other than yourselves, would you then, because the ultimate goal is to kick Labour out of Blackburn, would you then consider standing down if you don't get the support that you're asking for? You see, that's another question running in most of our minds, that if we split the votes, for example, because we have a few more candidates, not independently but with other candidates, and we're worried the ultimate goal is, at this stage, for us, is to kick Labour out by whatever means, compromise, coercion, call it what you want. One of the questions that I have, that if we decide as a group, because we're the largest group and people are still asking us, and they've I shared a text earlier, well, my ward, for example, they said, they asked me a question, what are we doing about the MP? Are you guys fielding one? And I said, we'll let you know next week. And what they came back was, which I shared with my group on our personal councillors group, is that they said, whoever you back, we're with you, sort of thing. So in view of all that, I know it's been a long-winded thing for me with that, Craig. If we decide that we're going to back another candidate, or we're not going to back you, should I say, would you then withdraw? Or would then George say, no, you have to stay there? Because you said you're a mind of your own, and you've said that, if you find, and we at the moment, to be very honest and frank, like he said, we carry a lot of clout as independents, and if we affiliate ourselves or go in coalition with anybody, not just George, we might have repercussions. So we're very mindful of that as well. So would you consider finally then to say, look, if you don't back me, then I'll back off and the votes won't be split?
I mean, I'm not going to give you any commitment, but I would have to consider it. I mean, it'd be crazy not to consider it. So I would certainly give it my thought. And I always said that I will stand here for people who Blackburn want me to stand. Now, if you're saying, well, actually, Craig, we don't really want you, and I've got no substantive base of support in this town, then it would be a bit daft to stand. So I would give it a thought. On the other hand, I would be under strong pressure still from the Workers' Party to stand. There's also another way of looking at this, which is the problem of having too many independents. Because you say there's Adnan, who I think has been keen to stand anyway. From my conversation with him, was thinking of standing for the Greens and other things. Then there's Tiger, who may or may not, who I think has advertised he is standing. So there's a danger of a proliferation of independents, which is a good reason to have a party label. And your point about how if you stand for a party, you are obliged to follow what that party does. Well, yeah, I think that's a lot of what's wrong with politics. I think it's a lot of what's wrong with politics in this country. I don't like party machines, and that may be true as a general proposition, but it's not true of how I will behave if I'm your MP. If I didn't broadly agree with the Workers' Party in terms of being to the left of the Labour Party, in terms of wanting a foreign policy that's not about perpetual war, and that's wanting better policies on housing, on, as I say, nationalisation of utilities, on immigration. If I didn't broadly agree with them, if I wasn't a left-wing person, then I wouldn't be standing with them. Yes, I broadly agree with them. But it's not a party in the sense of having 200 MPs who all have to be neatly whipped or whatever. It's a small group of people, and it's very new, and it's forming. So it's not like saying to a Conservative, are you going to follow all the positions of the Conservative Party?
Well, as far as the proliferation, as you say,
but
to a certain degree it would reduce the number of candidates. Obviously, we know Conservatives are going to probably field one, Labour's going to field one, all the political parties are going to. As far as the independents are concerned, there's only a minor few. Tiger, most likely at the end of the day, he probably will say, well, thank you very much, in view of Adnan's, backing off in your favour, or you backing off in Adnan's favour. Then we could easily say, look, if these people are... The ultimate goal at this stage is to oust Labour out.
Yeah, I agree.
And the rest of what you say about the policies and things, I think for us, I would say to a large degree, I would speak for them, that it's a secondary issue at this stage. First and foremost is how to get Labour out of Blackburn.
Yeah. And I think I explained that. I think I bring in a lot of support from outside that will come and help. I bring in finance that will help. I think I bring in a broad appeal to certain voter groups, including, as I say, more liberal Tories, including to socialists, where I'm known. There are quite a lot of people. I promise you, there are quite a lot of people in the indigenous community in Blackburn who know my name, who follow my blog, who've followed me on social media, who watch me on Consortium News or Judge Napolitano or all these different outlets that I turn up on, and who will support me. I have that well of existing support in the community. So I think there are reasons I could win. If you were to say to me that, okay, Adnan's agreed he's going to back down and support you, Tiger, and possibly Tiger's going to back down and support you, so there's not a proliferation of independent candidates, then I'd be much more open to just being an independent candidate as opposed to having the Workers' Party label, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, the voters will still know that we're in collaboration.
But
I think I'll let somebody else have a chance.
My preference at the moment is to stand with the Workers' Party label. That remains my preference for the reasons I've explained. Yeah.
Shucks, do you want to come?
Firstly, Craig, obviously your credentials are commendable for what you've done for humanity. So I salute you for that. Just something that I've just picked up on there first. So I've just got a couple of questions, if you don't mind. So I'll go backwards with the most recent point that you've made in terms of standing with the independents. But in the same token, you've said about not aligning with George and classing it as a betrayal. So I'm slightly confused as to which side of the betrayal would you prefer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Would you rather just tell George from the outset, it's a no, and then that's a betrayal? Or then would you tell him that you with the independents, because obviously you've got backing on the independents because of the huge amount of backing that we have. That's also classed as a betrayal. So I'm a little bit confused or in the middle of the road with that one in terms of what the actual take is on that. Because either way, to me, it's still classed as a betrayal.
Yeah. It's difficult. It's partly difficult because we're having to do it all so quick. We discussed this with a couple of people at a meeting at Showcat's house, and and I was hoping, frankly, that the election's not going to be till October, and we can work together in an alliance between now and October, and we can just get to know each other and work together and get a feeling for what's the best way to do it. And we even had a discussion. We thought that, well, in the meantime, we could put up billboards around Blackburn, for example, this summer, which have Workers' Party logo and Blackburn Independence logo on the same poster, if you see what I mean, and just work our way through these questions, because it's a dilemma, and you're quite right with the dilemma. And as I say, my hoping was that over a few weeks of working together, we'd work out what was the best way to resolve it. And I don't pretend it's not a dilemma for me. It is a dilemma for me. And it's also a dilemma for you, in a sense, and that you've got to decide what it is that you're prepared to work with and what you're not prepared to work with. And that, I hope, is what will come out of your discussions after we've finished, where you have a talk and come back on what you've decided. But it is a dilemma. I mean, my preference would be to stand for the Workers' Party in alliance with you as the Independents. That would be my preference, because then I'd get the logo on the ballot paper, which I think might help with some voters. So that remains my preference.
Just a final one that's come to my mind. Would you consider standing in a different town? If we say, look, Craig, we'd like you to vote you in a different town, would you consider other than Blackburn? So that we accommodate whatever we think is best for the area?
I think it's late to do that, bluntly. I think it's late to do that. My thoughts leapt to Blackburn because I'd stood here before, frankly, and because it's unfinished business to me. It's unfinished business, and I rather look forward to.
Jack's not here, though.
Jack's not here, but the places I was locked out of might be open to me now, and I would be wrong if I told you that there's not some existing sadness in my heart that I was rejected so comprehensively, not just in terms of people not voting for me, because that's what elections are for. People vote for you, not for you. But in terms of hospitality and friendliness and openness to listen to what I was trying to say to people. Because I thought when I stood here, I thought, Muslims are being tortured to death, being brought in by the CIA from around the world in order to get false confessions to Al-Qaeda, to feed this war on terror narrative that's being used to arrest young Muslims all around the UK on trumped up charges. It's being used for the prevent programme, all of that. I'm helping people. I want to stand against that. And I got here and I found the Muslim community shut the doors on me completely and wouldn't even talk to me. And that hurt. And it still hurts a bit. And that's one reason why I wanted to come back here and right that wrong, if you like, and talk to people and it's actually meant an awful lot to me that quite a few people have come up to me since I've been here and more or less apologised or said that, I'm sorry we didn't support you back then, including incidentally Showkat we were talking about, who remembered having a talk with me when he was a very young man by my fire engine that I was campaigning from outside the mosque. And he said the talk he had with me had actually stayed with him and had in fact had an effect on his political views ever ever since. But there's a reason why I'm in Blackburn and not somewhere else. Let me put it that way. There's a reason I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, where you're
Before,
from, I think
yeah,
just looked at
before I
the
bring
question.
Shaks in, just one thing that's coming to my mind. I've heard on one or two occasions you've acknowledged the fact that Blackburn doesn't have a segregation issue, but by virtue of what you said earlier with regards to the independents only having success in predominantly Muslim areas, are you now able to acknowledge that there is a segregation issue, and how do you propose to address that?
When I was here 20 years ago, Blackburn had a huge segregation issue, and I actually commented. In fact, I think I published after I'd been here a couple of months. I said, I've never seen on the streets of Blackburn a mixed race group of friends just walking around together. I haven't, and I've been living here for 2 months. And I said that to people who were with me, and they said, "Oh, don't talk nonsense. Can't be true. Can't be true." And I said, "Well, you look," and I got everyone to look, and nobody ever did. Because you didn't get it. You didn't get groups of Asian and white people walking around chatting about football, being just happily mixing together. It really was segregated in that sense, and it felt very weird. As someone who'd been living in London, the sort of comparative segregation felt very strange. And and forgive me because my memory is not going to remember the names of the schools. There were a couple of secondary schools really quite close to each other, and one was pretty well entirely Asian, the other one was pretty well entirely white. And I was thinking, well, is it just wrong? And it must be the council has allowed this to happen. And there are areas of housing where there was social housing, which again was in effect segregated. And possibly if people who lived here got used to this as the normality, but it's not normal, and it shouldn't be normal. And a lot of that needs to be addressed through education authorities and councils, and there needs to be a positive will to address it. But it isn't as bad as it was, because you do now actually see mixed race groups of people walking around, which I couldn't find 20 years ago. So I don't get me wrong. I haven't been saying. I certainly didn't mean to get the impression Blackburn doesn't have a problem. I'm quite sure Blackburn still does, but it's not at the level it was 20 years ago. It has, I think, mellowed.
Okay. Contrary, I think the schools have gone the completely opposite way, where you get more schools now that are predominantly white or Asian. That's across the board. I think that's something to do with admission policies as well, but we'll just park that for the time being.
Admission policies are exactly the kind of thing that need to be tackled.
Absolutely.
That's exactly
I've
right.
got three quick questions. Can you make it quick? And then I've got Shaks and I've got...
I don't know whether you've covered this already or whether it's been asked,
Yeah.
but one of the things it's been mentioned out there already past the election period was you are like a Scottish guy, you're always, Scottish, all the time. A person who has no connection, no business, no whatsoever in Blackburn. I appreciate before the last question you've answered a little bit, but can you elaborate a little bit more? You have no connection whatsoever with Blackburn, then all of a sudden, so many years later, opportunity arises and you're up again in Blackburn. How can we tell the residents of Blackburn, assure them that, well, look, you are the person from Blackburn? How can we do that?
Well, I'm your present MP, Scottish, but I'm actually half English. But I think it's not unusual at all for a member of Parliament not to come from a place they stand in. That's actually almost the norm. I think what you can assure people is that you've got a candidate who's remarkably well qualified, who's going to work very, very hard for their interests, who has a real interest in local affairs and in learning about local affairs. And I realise I've got a learning curve to go up, but that also that you've got a candidate who's going to be working with who's able to operate at a very high level, and is going to be doing that on behalf of your independent group of councillors, who are the people who have the expert knowledge and expertise. That I'm going to be a voice for you if you see what I mean. So I think that's the answer to that, really. That I'm not pretending I have all the knowledge myself, but I am very, very willing to be your voice in Parliament.
Thanks for that. Shaks, quickly, and then I'll go on to names.
It was just a quick one. I mean, I think Sullivan's pretty much sort of asked the question that I wanted to ask, so thanks for that. Just a quick, in reference to obviously the protest that occurred. In fact, I've got two very quick questions, sorry. So I'll make it very quick. I'm conscious of time. So one of the other speakers, namely Shanaz, on record at the mark, said, down with Western civilization, which yourself sort of responded to with a nod. I'm guessing in support with it. So just wanted to know what your sort of take is on that, because that kind of rattled the indigenous crowd we had at the back of the pub just here. So that's my first quick question. And the second one, with the greatest of respect, is if, say, for example, we decide on Adnan for argument's sake, or you for argument's sake, what would your position be in terms of, would you still carry on fighting the cause, or would you be happy to step down and support the other candidate?
Yeah. I don't think she said down with Western civilization. I think what happened was, I think she repeated the old Gandhi joke, where he was asked about Western civilization, and you replied, it would be a good idea. I think that's what she was saying. And I certainly wouldn't nod with someone saying down with Western civilization. That's a slightly crazy thing to, to say. And I don't think she's that mad. don't put me on that. I should say I'd only met her once before that demonstration, when she was driving me from one place to another place, which was sort of 400 yards apart, and we managed to end up 10 miles away, which was that was my only previous experience of it. But no, I mean, let me be quite. I'm not a Muslim. My wife and my children are Muslim, but I'm not. I don't pretend to live a Muslim lifestyle. I don't, and I drink, for example. And you're talking about people in the pub. I'm a candidate who can and will campaign around the pubs, as well as work with the Muslim community. I can walk into Wetherspoons and have a pint and chat to people, and very happily do that. And I'm someone who's very happy in that environment and to talk to people in their own terms. So I don't think I'm going to terrify that community or make them think I dislike their civilization. I don't think that's a big worry. I'm terribly sorry, I forgot the second.
Second one was, so for example, if
or would I stand down?
Yeah.
I'll need to think about it. I mean, I'll need to give it serious thought. I don't know is the answer. I'll need to give it serious consideration.
Okay, thanks for that. Mebs, last question and we'll close after that.
Yeah, I mean, you've come across very honest, very sincere. Just want to touch upon what Solly said. If you were to stand and get elected, how would you propose to spend more time in Blackburn?
I mean, I live here, undoubtedly. I mean, I'm here now, and I'm not going away till the 5th of July. And if I get elected, I'm not going away ever. That's it. I'm here. There's no doubt about that at all. I'd move my home and my family here immediately. So I would be resident in Blackburn. I wouldn't try to be the MP for Blackburn for Edinburgh. That'd be a bit daft. I'm perfectly happy about it. Obviously, there's, with any move, when you've got children, there's schools and those kind of things to think about. We would do that, and we would do it straight away.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Greg, and thank you for apology for the short notice, because obviously yesterday's announcement was a bit sort of, so I thought we'd get this boxed off.
And that's to do with Sunak, isn't it? I was expecting it 3-4 months.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So thank you very much for taking time out, and thank you. Sorry for the inconvenience of having you to come down on a taxi, and it's the transport system, which is bust, I think, and there's nothing. Well, we've just cancelled HS2 as well, but we've got some funding on the back of that, so that's fine. Yeah, so really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And are you staying around, or are you going to be heading back tomorrow?
No, I say that's me here.
Okay.
I'm now
Excellent.
here till the 6th of July at least.
Okay.
That's me here. I'm staying for 3 or 4 days just in the best Western hotel here. Then I'm moving into a flat on Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.